Well, welcome back to One Simple Recipe, where we're hoping to get you one step closer to better health. I'm Judy Matusky. I'm a registered dietitian and culinary nutritionist with Athens Nutrition, and today it's all about nuts. We're going to talk about nuts and why you should be adding them to your diet if you can. I realize some people cannot because of allergies or other intolerances, but if you can, we'll talk about why. Today it's sweet and spicy nuts. This is so easy, couldn't be easier, so let's go ahead and get started. We are just going to use a whole bunch of nuts, and we're going to put them in a bowl, toss them together, and then pop them in the oven. All right, so we're starting with almonds, and we're going to use about 1.5 cups of almonds. And as we use these nuts, we're going to talk a little bit about the nutrition about them, because there are some top shelf nuts and seeds. This contains seeds as well. So 1.5 cups. There are some top shelf nuts, and some of the top ones that I love to include in my diet, as well as I recommend for you, would be to add almonds. And almonds are an interesting nut because they're one of the highest sources of calcium in nuts, which is pretty cool. So it's a great way to boost your calcium, particularly for women, those of us 50 plus. We really want to keep our bones strong and healthy, so almonds are a great addition, and they're nice to have as part of your nut mix. The next one, we're going to do equal amount of walnuts, and this is another top shelf nut. It's again 1.5 cups. These are full nut, aren't really chopped nuts. They're a little bit larger. This is kind of half shells, half of a walnut, but also just some pieces as well. But walnuts I have them on my top shelf. They're very low in saturated fat, which is wonderful. Most nuts are, but some are a little bit higher than others. Walnuts are nice and low in saturated fat, and also they're a rich form of a plant version of omega-3 fatty acids. So I know we can get those from our fish and seafood, but this is a plant version, and it's a nice way to add that into your eating plan, especially if you're adding nuts. So 2 top shelf ones, we have the almonds and we have the walnuts. Now we're going to switch a little bit and go into we're adding a seed to this. Now you could use sunflower seeds, which are phenomenal. We're going to use pumpkin seeds, and these are pepitas, and I kind of just learned that pepitas are a pumpkin seed, but they're from a very specific type of pumpkin. So the pumpkin seeds that we're going to get out of our pumpkin soon when we're carving our pumpkins for Halloween, those are great too. Nutritionally, those pumpkin seeds as well as these pepitas are phenomenal. So use both of them, but pumpkin seeds are pretty unique in their nutritional value, which I love because they're rich in magnesium, they're rich in zinc, they've got a pretty good source of calcium. They also have some natural melatonin in them. So for all of us who are getting a little bit older, maybe you're finding sleep to be a little challenging, melatonin is naturally in foods, and it's actually a decent dose of it in most nuts as well as seeds, and pepitas happen to be, pretty high. They're also really high in magnesium. As with a lot of nuts, they are pretty good sources of magnesium, but pepitas pumpkin seeds are high in magnesium, which helps with our bones in addition to calcium. So we kind of need both of those minerals. And I know just that most women particularly are not getting enough calcium and probably not getting enough magnesium. So adding nuts and seeds to your diet regularly can help. All right, so we have that. Now you can use different mixes of nuts. Obviously, it's to your preference. These are my top 2 nuts that's in here, plus these pepitas. Sometimes I'll add some sunflower seeds to this, but I kind of keep the ratio, pretty much the same. So there's about 3 cups of nuts and about 1/2 cup of pepitas. All right, now we're going to do the seasoning, which makes it sweet and spicy. So I'm going to use some maple syrup. That's our sweetener. You probably could do honey. I have not used honey in this. It's about 1/3 cup of maple syrup. If you wanted to, certainly go ahead and use honey. I think it would work. All right, and then we're going to add our olive oil, which is about 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. And all of this is kind of also going to help to coat and kind of help the seasonings to adhere. And then the spices are paprika. Now I'm using smoked paprika, which I don't typically like a smoky flavor in things, but with these nuts, it really does work. Gives it that background flavor that I think is nice. It's not overpowering. If you want to just use regular paprika, that's fine. Just use a really good one because you really want some paprikas I feel like just don't add much flavor at all. So we're gonna add just about a teaspoon. I go a little light on it just because I don't want it overly smoky, but if you like that, then definitely a teaspoon. Now we're gonna add maybe half of a teaspoon of red pepper flakes, which crushed red pepper or cayenne. That's where we're getting our spicy, you know, so that you can, this recipe calls for half a cup, but I mean, half a teaspoon, but you know, you can use more if you want to get really spicy, or you can leave it out if you don't want them spicy. That's no problem. And then we definitely need a little bit of salt. These are unsalted nuts and unsalted seeds that I'm using. I didn't mention that, but they are. And I get I typically get my nuts from Costco. Because I go through so many nuts and seeds that I get them there. And then when I get them in like these big bags, I put them in a freezer bag like this, right into a freezer bag, and then they stay in my freezer. And so I can just pull them out and use them, and that's where I can really kind of keep them fresh. Now for a little interesting extra flavor, we're adding rosemary. We're still getting some rosemary from the garden, which is awesome. I just picked this morning. So I'm just chopping up some fresh rosemary because I have it. If you don't have rosemary, it costs about 2 tablespoons, give or take. If you don't have fresh rosemary, go ahead and just use dried rosemary. But if you're using dried rosemary, I would definitely use less. So this calls for about 2 tablespoons of fresh rosemary. So maybe just 1 tablespoon of dried rosemary. If you're not a big fan of rosemary, and I understand that's one of my favorite herbs because it has a pretty unique and intense, almost piney kind of flavor to it. You could substitute something else. You could leave it out if you wanted to. You don't necessarily have to have this in here as part of this spice blend. But the one thing that I was going to try is I think it would be really good with fennel seeds. And I love to put some fennel seeds in a lot of things, particularly like when I'm making, you know, like a pasta sauce, I'll use them. So I think fennel seeds would work well in here. I think you could probably use a little dried oregano if you wanted to, or even dried thyme, or fresh if you have it. But this is a little bit